The silent cry. Dr. Lyria Voss adjusted her delicate crystalline instruments for the thousandth time that cycle, her four arms working in perfect harmony as she analyzed the cosmic radiation patterns flowing through the Kepler Nebula. The research station Harmony's Edge floated silently in the void, its bioluminescent hull pulsing with the gentle rhythm that marked all Zephyrian architecture. Around her, dozens of her fellow scientists worked in peaceful concentration, their translucent skin shimmering with the soft blues and greens that indicated contentment. The Zephyrians had always been the galaxy's gentle scholars. Evolved on a world of floating islands and perpetual twilight, they possessed a natural affinity for energy manipulation and stellar phenomena. Their entire civilization dedicated itself to understanding the universe's mysteries, sharing their discoveries freely with any species willing to learn. War was a concept so foreign to them that they barely had words for it in their melodic language. Lyria paused in her work, sensing a disturbance in the nebular currents. Her sensitive organs detected something wrong with the cosmic flow, like a discordant note in a perfect symphony. She extended her awareness, reaching out with the bioelectric fields that surrounded her species, trying to identify the source of the disturbance. The first sign of trouble came not through her instruments, but through the screaming. The station's outer observatory erupted in violent light as massive ships materialized from the nebula's depths. These vessels were nothing like the graceful, living ships of the Zephyrians or the sleek craft of other peaceful species. They were brutal constructions of metal and rage, bristling with weapons that spoke of a culture built on conquest and domination. The Korthik Reavers had found them. Warlord Grakthar stood on the bridge of his flagship Bloodhunger, his massive frame towering over the control stations. His species had evolved on a world where only the strongest survived, where every day meant fighting for resources, territory, and the right to exist. Standing nearly 3 meters tall with natural armor plating and razor-sharp claws, the Korthiks had conquered 17 star systems through pure brutality. Soft worlders, Grakthar growled, his voice like grinding stone. Look how they cower. Signal the hunting packs. We take everything of value, including the weaklings themselves. Their energy manipulation abilities will serve us well as slaves. The Korthik assault was swift and merciless. Their boarding pods smashed through the station's organic hull like spears through silk. Warriors poured into the corridors, their powered armor clanking against the smooth surfaces while their weapons discharged bursts of searing plasma. The Zephyrians had no weapons, no soldiers, no concept of organized violence. They were researchers, philosophers, artists. When the raiders came for them, they could only flee or surrender. Lyria found herself trapped in the central laboratory as chaos erupted around her. Through the station's bioneural network, she felt the terror and pain of her fellow scientists as they were captured or killed. The Korthiks were methodical in their cruelty, taking the young and healthy as slaves while eliminating anyone they deemed useless. Her primary manipulator arms worked frantically at the emergency communication array, while her secondary arms activated the station's final protocol systems. The Zephyrians had always believed in the fundamental goodness of intelligent species. Even now, facing extinction, Lyria held on to that faith. This is Research Station Harmony's Edge in the Kepler Nebula. She transmitted on all frequencies, her harmonious voice carrying across the void. We are under attack by hostile forces. Our people are being taken as slaves. We have no defenses, no weapons, no way to fight back. If there are any civilizations listening, any species with the power to help, please, we are dying. The message burst outward at light speed, carrying with it not just words, but the electromagnetic harmonics of Zephyrian emotion. Any species capable of interpreting the signal would feel the desperate hope and crushing fear that accompanied Lyria's plea. She sealed the laboratory's biolock just as Korthak warriors began cutting through the outer barriers. Around her, the station's living systems started to shut down as their neural networks were severed. The soft, warm light that had illuminated her home for decades began to fade. 300 light-years away, Captain Sarah Chen was reviewing fleet deployment reports in her ready room aboard the UES Prometheus when the long-range communications array detected the Zephyrian transmission. The Universal Translation Protocol worked quickly to convert the alien harmonics into understandable speech, but even the computer systems seemed to struggle with the emotional weight of the message. Sarah had commanded deep space operations for the United Earth Navy for 8 years, leading humanity's expansion into the galaxy's outer reaches. At 34, she was young for a fleet captain, but Earth's harsh evolutionary heritage had produced humans who matured quickly and fought strategically under pressure. Her species had earned their place among the stars through determination, adaptability, and an instinctive understanding of conflict that most peaceful aliens couldn't comprehend. "Commander Webb, report to my ready room immediately," she called over the intercom. Marcus Webb arrived within minutes, his tactical training evident in the way he moved through the ship's corridors. As the Prometheus's strategic operations officer, he was responsible for analyzing threats and developing response protocols. Like most humans who served in deep space, he carried himself with the controlled alertness of a predator species that had evolved on a world where danger lurked behind every shadow. "You've heard the transmission?" Sarah asked. Marcus nodded grimly. Long-range sensors confirm massive energy discharges in the Kepler Nebula. Someone's conducting military operations against a civilian target. The Zephyrians have no defensive capabilities. Sarah pulled up the tactical display, showing their current position relative to the distress signal. 47 hours at maximum burn to reach them. What do we know about potential hostiles in that region? Intelligence reports suggest Korthak Reaver activity has been increasing along the rim territories. If it's them, we're looking at a force designed for raiding and slave-taking. They'll have superior numbers, but their technology is focused on intimidation rather than tactical efficiency. Sarah studied the data, her mind working through the implications. The Prometheus led a small exploration fleet, 1 heavy cruiser, 2 destroyers, and 3 support vessels. Against a full Korthak raiding force, they would be significantly outnumbered. The smart decision would be to report the incident to Earth Command and wait for reinforcements. The prudent choice would be to protect her own ships and crews, rather than risk them for strangers. The safe option would be to send a message of regret and continue their original mission. But Sarah Chen was human, and humans had not conquered the challenges of Earth by choosing the safe option. "Signal the fleet," she ordered. "All ships prepare for combat operations. Plot a course for the Kepler Nebula, maximum burn. We're going to answer that call for help." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Captain, regulations require authorization from Earth Command for military intervention in non-human conflicts." Sarah turned to face him, her expression carrying the quiet intensity that had earned her command of humanity's most advanced exploration vessel. "Commander, there are people dying who asked for help. The paperwork can wait." The human fleet altered course within the hour. 6 ships that had been conducting peaceful scientific surveys suddenly transformed into instruments of war. Weapon systems came online, defensive screens powered up, and combat protocols activated throughout the vessels. Most of the crew had never fired a shot in anger, but every human carried genetic memories of warfare that stretched back to their species' origins. In the ship's briefing room, department heads gathered for the tactical planning session. Sarah stood before the main display, showing what little intelligence they had gathered about the situation. "We're dealing with an unknown number of Korthak vessels conducting what appears to be a slave raid against the Zephyrian research station. Our mission objectives are simple: neutralize the hostile force and rescue as many civilians as possible." Lieutenant Commander Torres, the ship's chief engineer, voiced the concern that everyone was thinking. "Captain, we don't even know if any Zephyrians are still alive. This could be a recovery mission. Then we recover what we can and make sure the Korthaks understand that attacking peaceful researchers has consequences," Sarah replied. "But I have a feeling we're not too late. Slave raiders need live cargo. They'll keep prisoners until they're ready to withdraw." Dr. Jennifer Park, the fleet's xenobiologist, brought up the cultural briefing on her tablet. The Zephyrians have had peaceful contact with 17 different species over the past century. They've shared medical technology, astronomical data, and energy manipulation techniques freely. They've never harmed anyone. The briefing continued for another hour, covering tactical approaches, rescue protocols, and contingency plans. Throughout the discussion, one theme remained constant. The humans were significantly outgunned and outnumbered, but they were going anyway. As the meeting broke up, Marcus stayed behind to speak with Sarah privately. "You know this could end badly for us," he said quietly. "We could lose ships, crews. Earth Command might court-martial you for unauthorized military action." Sarah looked out at the stars streaming past as the fleet pushed toward maximum velocity. Somewhere ahead, in the depths of the Kepler Nebula, strangers were suffering while waiting for help that might never come. "Marcus, do you remember the Academy lectures on human psychology? How they explained that our species survived because we developed something most others didn't? The willingness to help others even at personal cost," Marcus replied, understanding her point. "That's what makes us human. Not our technology, not our tactics, not even our stubbornness. It's the fact that when someone calls for help, we answer." She turned to face him, her resolve absolute. The Zephyrians didn't call on any specific species. They just called for anyone with the power to help. Today, that's us. The human fleet continued its journey through the void, 6 small ships carrying the hopes of a dying research station. Behind them, Earth slept peacefully, unaware that its children were about to introduce the galaxy to a concept that peaceful species had forgotten. Sometimes, the cavalry really does arrive. In her laboratory on the dying station, Lyria clutched her research crystals as Korthak warriors finally breached the biolock. As they dragged her toward the slave pens, she whispered one final prayer to the cosmic forces she had spent her life studying. She asked for miracles, for intervention, for someone to prove that the universe was not entirely cruel. She had no way of knowing that her prayers were already being answered by creatures from a world where angels were born with claws. Thunder from the void. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler Nebula like ghosts materializing from a nightmare. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, her eyes fixed on the tactical display as it populated with the horrific scene before them. The Zephyrian research station hung in space like a broken flower, its bioluminescent hull dim and flickering with the irregular patterns that indicated severe trauma to its living systems. Around it, 7 massive Korthak vessels moved in lazy circles, their brutal angular designs a stark contrast to the organic curves of their victim. "Sensor report," Sarah ordered, her voice carrying the controlled calm that marked human commanders under stress. Lieutenant Kim operated her console with practiced efficiency, reading multiple life signs aboard the station, but they're scattered and weak. The Korthaks have established holding areas in what appears to be cargo sections. Estimate 200 Zephyrian survivors in captivity. Commander Webb stepped up beside the captain's chair, his tactical mind already working through the implications. 7 ships, Captain. Intelligence was wrong about their numbers. We're looking at a full war pack, not a simple raiding force. Sarah studied the enemy formation. The Korthak vessels were larger than human ships, built for intimidation and brute force rather than tactical elegance. Their weapons were designed to disable and capture rather than destroy, which explained why the research station was still intact. "They're not expecting resistance," she observed. "Look at their positioning. No defensive screen, no overlapping fire zones. They're conducting salvage operations, not preparing for battle." The communications officer looked up from her station. "Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the Korthak flagship. They're demanding our immediate withdrawal from their harvesting grounds." "Put it on speaker." The bridge filled with the guttural voice of Warlord Graktar, his words translated by the universal protocol systems. "Unknown vessels, you are interfering with lawful conquest operations. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. The Soft-Worlders belong to the Korthak Dominion now." Sarah looked around her bridge, seeing the expressions of her crew. These were humans who had grown up on Earth, where every child learned about the long history of their species' struggle against those who would prey on the weak. The look in their eyes was not fear, but the cold recognition that they faced an enemy who needed to be stopped. "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Sarah's voice carried across space with the quiet authority that had served humanity since they first began protecting their own. "Korthak vessels, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. You are conducting illegal operations against a peaceful research facility. Release your prisoners immediately and withdraw from this system." The response came back as harsh laughter. "Earth creatures, we have heard of your pathetic little species, soft-worlders who play at being warriors. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Leave now or join the researchers in our slave pens." Sarah looked at Marcus, who nodded once. The time for talking was over. "All ships, this is Prometheus Actual. Execute Operation Shepherd's Watch. Remember, we're here to save lives, not take them unless we have to. But if they want to fight..." She paused, allowing her words to carry the weight of human determination. "Show them what Earth's children learned from our homeworld." The human fleet moved with precision that spoke of generations of tactical evolution. Earth had been a harsh teacher, creating a species that understood warfare not as sport or conquest, but as a grim necessity sometimes required to protect those who could not protect themselves. The Prometheus and her sister ship, Defiant, accelerated directly toward the enemy formation, while the destroyers Lightning and Thunder began a flanking maneuver that would bring them in behind the Korthak vessels. The support ships hung back, their medical bays preparing to receive casualties while their tactical systems provided targeting data. Warlord Grakthar watched the human approach with growing confusion. They attack head-on. 6 ships against 7. These Earth creatures are even more stupid than reported. His confusion turned to alarm as the human ships suddenly demonstrated capabilities that no intelligence report had mentioned. The Prometheus split her fire between 2 Korthak vessels, her energy weapons striking with surgical precision at propulsion and weapons systems, rather than attempting to destroy the enemy ships outright. The humans were fighting to disable, not kill. "Impossible." Grakthar roared as his tactical officer reported that the human weapons were somehow bypassing their shields. "How are they penetrating our defenses?" The answer lay in humanity's approach to technology. While most species developed weapons to overcome the specific defenses they knew about, humans had evolved on a world where survival meant preparing for threats they couldn't predict. Their weapons were designed with adaptable frequencies and multi-vector approaches that could adjust in real time to whatever protection systems they encountered. The Korthak vessels returned fire, their massive plasma cannons sending bolts of destructive energy toward the human fleet. But the Earth ships moved like living things, their pilots drawing on reflexes honed by evolution on a world where everything was trying to kill them. They twisted and turned through the bombardment, their smaller size and superior maneuverability making them nearly impossible to target effectively. Lieutenant Commander Torres watched from the engineering deck as the ship's defensive systems redistributed power to compensate for incoming fire. Human shields didn't just absorb damage, they analyzed it and adapted, learning from each impact to better resist the next. "Captain, we're taking hits, but our adaptive defenses are holding," she reported. "These Korthak weapons use brute force rather than finesse. Our systems are already developing countermeasures." On the tactical display, the battle was progressing exactly as Marcus had predicted. The Korthaks fought like the apex predators they were, relying on superior size and firepower to overwhelm their enemies. But humans had learned to be the apex predators on a world filled with apex predators. They fought smart, fast, and with a coordination that spoke of millions of years spent hunting in packs. The destroyer Lightning completed its flanking maneuver and struck at the rear Korthak vessels with concentrated fire. The enemy ships, designed for frontal assault, found their rear defenses overwhelmed by the precisely targeted human attack. 2 Korthak vessels lost propulsion and began drifting helplessly. "This is impossible," Grakthar snarled, watching his superior force being systematically dismantled by the smaller human fleet. What kind of species are these Earth creatures? His science officer's voice carried fear as he answered, "Sir, according to our analysis, they evolved on what the Galactic Classification System calls a Class XI death world. Everything on their planet was designed to kill them, so they became designed to kill everything else." Grakthar felt something he had not experienced since his youth, genuine fear. The humans weren't just winning, they were doing it while deliberately avoiding unnecessary casualties. Every shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy, every maneuver designed to minimize damage while maximizing effectiveness. They fought like angels who had learned warfare in hell. The battle reached its climax when the Prometheus moved directly toward Grakthar's flagship. The massive Korthek vessel unleashed everything it had at the approaching human cruiser, but Sarah's ship seemed to dance between the energy bolts like a creature born to avoid combat. At point-blank range, the Prometheus fired a single, carefully aimed shot that penetrated the Korthek vessel's bridge shields and struck the command center with surgical precision. The blast disabled the flagship's control systems without causing significant casualties, leaving Grakthar's ship dead in space. "Korthak vessels," Sarah's voice came across all frequencies. "You are defeated. Shut down your weapons and prepare to release all prisoners. Any attempt to harm the Zephyrian civilians will result in the complete destruction of your fleet." There was a long moment of silence before Grakthar's voice came back, subdued and filled with something that might have been respect. What do you want from us, Earth creatures?" "We want you to let the researchers go and leave this system. That's all. No territory, no tribute, no conquest. We came here because someone asked for help." The concept was so foreign to Korthak, thinking that Grakthar could barely process it. "You fight just to help strangers. You risk your lives for beings not of your own species." "That's what we do," Sarah replied simply. Over the next several hours, human boarding teams worked with careful efficiency to evacuate the Zephyrian survivors from the Korthak vessels. Marine Sergeant Diana Lopes led the rescue operations, her team moving through the enemy ships with weapons ready but restraint evident in every action. The Zephyrians, they found, were traumatized but alive. Dr. Lyria Voss was among the first to be brought aboard the Prometheus, her forearms trembling as she was helped to the medical bay. "You came," she whispered to Dr. Park, the human xenobiologist who was treating her injuries. "We called into the void, and you came." "Someone had to," Dr. Park replied gently. "That's what neighbors do." As the last of the survivors were transferred to human ships, Warlord Grakthar requested permission to speak with Captain Chen directly. The conversation took place via secure channel, with Grakthar's image appearing on the Prometheus bridge screen. The massive Korthek warrior looked different somehow, diminished by the experience of defeat. "Captain Chen, I must ask, why did you not destroy us when you had the chance? Your species clearly possesses the capability." Sarah considered the question carefully. "Because destroying you wouldn't have saved any more lives. Our mission was to rescue the Zephyrians, not to punish you. But we are your enemies. We took slaves from innocents. Today, you're our enemies," Sarah agreed. "Tomorrow, maybe we find a different way to settle our differences. That's the thing about humans, Warlord. We believe most problems can be solved without killing anyone." Grakthar was quiet for a long moment. "Your species is unusual. We will remember this encounter. See that you do. And Warlord, if we hear about you raiding peaceful research stations again, we'll come back. And next time, we might not be so concerned about casualties." The Korthek fleet departed the system within hours, their ships limping away into the nebulous depths. The human fleet remained long enough to help stabilize the research station's biosystems and ensure that all survivors received proper medical attention. Dr. Lyria Voss stood in the observation deck of the Prometheus, watching as repair drones worked to restore her home. Captain Chen joined her, offering a cup of coffee that the Zephyrian had discovered she enjoyed despite her species' unusual physiology. "Your people saved us. Lyria said quietly. Not just from the cortex, but from losing faith in the universe itself. We just answered a call for help, Sarah replied. Any decent species would have done the same. Lyria's skin shimmered with the colors that indicated deep emotion among her people. Captain, I have studied 17 different civilizations in my career. None of them would have risked their lives for strangers. What makes humans different? Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking about the question that went to the heart of what made her species unique. Maybe it's because we evolved on a world that was always trying to kill us. We learned early that the only way to survive was to take care of each other. It became part of who we are. And now you extend that protection to strangers. Why not? The universe is dangerous enough without intelligent species preying on each other. Someone has to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. As the human fleet prepared to depart, carrying the rescued Zephyrians to safety, word of the battle was already spreading through the galactic communication networks. The story would be told and retold, how the peaceful researchers called for help, and how the humans answered that call despite being outnumbered and outgunned. Some species would dismiss it as propaganda or exaggeration. Others would file it away as useful intelligence about human capabilities. But a few, those who had learned to listen for the deeper meanings in such stories, would understand the real message. In a galaxy filled with predators and prey, with conquerors and victims, a new player had emerged. They were called humans, and they possessed something that most civilizations had forgotten: the willingness to risk everything to help strangers. They were warriors born on a death world, but they fought like angels. And when the innocent called for help, they answered.